So it's with that we have the joy of having Mark Hutchinson come up. Mark, why don't you come up and join, and we'll get our. How about a round of welcome for Mark? It's great to have you. So this is the part where I have a choice as your interlocutor. I could either do my Jerry Springer imitation or my Oprah Winfrey. I don't know which. So if you don't mind.
I don't have these though. So.
All right, well, let's get comfortable here. So, all right.
Very fancy.
It's a little warm up here. Yeah. So, well, Mark, about 5 years ago, no, maybe 7 years ago, is when I first heard your name, when you were living here in Greenwich. Yeah. You'll soon notice, we'll go introduce Mark a little bit, that he comes from a different part of the world. But your name came up of, Mark would be a really great interviewee at some point. And then someone said, well, he's not senior enough. Well, first of all, that's a silly thing to say, because we're all in the spheres of influence and power, whether we're at the top of the organization chart or somewhere working our way towards it or the bottom. But I think it's fair to say that you qualify now,
well,
even if that were a test, which it's not. Mark, a terrific career, and you'll learn more about it. But his current role is to be the president and CEO of General Electric's Chinese business. Sort of pause and think about that. To be in charge of GE's China business. I think you have about 18,000 employees,
yep.
And plus a whole bunch of joint ventures, which we'll get into. They're in the aviation sector, a leader there, in the health sector, clean energy sector, and one of the most extraordinary, dangerous, interesting, exciting, intoxicating, crazy places you could probably think to work. But you didn't sort of get anointed. You got there in an interesting way. Can we first learn a little bit about Mark Hutchinson, the person? You were born in the UK, right?
UK. I don't know where my home is anymore. So I think because I'm English, but I lived in Australia for a while.
You went to university there, right?
University there. I worked for an investment bank for a while. So I did my stripes there too. Right. And then moved up to Hong Kong, and then joined GE up in Hong Kong. And then since I've been 20 years now with GE, and we've done 6 locations now. So we did.
So which are the countries?
Went to the UK after Hong Kong.
Right.
Then we're here. So actually we had 5 wonderful years with some wonderful people here in the audience actually. So I think about home actually. This is my spiritual home here.
Well, that's wonderful.
So and particularly Stanwich actually. In fact, I've only been in this room twice. The last time I was here, Neely Tao, who's most of you know, put a basket about there, and they raised $12 million for the new church.
Wow!
Right,
wow.
So this is.
By the way, that'll be there later.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but no, it really is. I mean, same my wife. This is. We come here and we feel this is spiritual home. So we had 5 wonderful years here. Then I went to I can't remember now, Tokyo. Yeah. 2 years in Tokyo. We went back to Hong Kong for a little while. Then we had 2 years in Paris. Right. And then I had to persuade my wife to leave Paris to go to Shanghai, which I was
But now I happen to know there's a little backstory here. Yeah. In addition to, honey, is this good for our marriage and my career and so forth, there was a transaction that went on, wasn't there?
No, there's always a bribe of some form. So this was a grand piano, which she has, and I had to borrow a grand piano. So now we're in Shanghai. I've been there 2 years. Actually been around China, though, for 20 years, which I think is... No, personally, that's one reason Jeff sent me there. So, was you just seen the change, right? So, China's on this 50-year journey. We're about 20 years into it, and 20 years ago, you go in the streets there wasn't cars, so there's bicycles and mouse suits, and you go today, it's like Manhattan. Yeah. It's the change has been remarkable.
Let me pause you there. So before we talk a bit more about business, how many years you been married now?
We've been married for 15 years.
15 years, and 4 kids, is it?
4 kids, yeah.
Are they gainfully employed?
Yeah, they are, yeah. So we're both second marriage, and she has 2 kids, I have 2 kids.
Terrific.
And they all work, which is wonderful. So it doesn't mean they're off the payroll, though. And one's in London, one was in Hong Kong. She's moved out, and now we've got 3 in Australia.
Terrific.
So we're a global family, literally. Right. So, and my wife, actually, some of you know my wife, Angel. In fact, you probably know.
Let's give it up for Angel.
I'm Mr. Angel. She's from Hong Kong. She's half Chinese and half Parsi, actually, which is Persian. Mm-hmm. So she has an interesting mix. Yeah,
that's terrific. That's terrific. And you mentioned bicycles in China as the main mode, But that's a part of your own life, right? You're a keen cyclist, right?
I love to cycle. Actually, I learned here, which is one of the, I think.
You learned to ride a bike here?
No, it's really the racing bike.
Oh, right,
so,
okay.
Road
I was
bikes.
a little worried about your upbringing.
No, I kind of knew that before. But it's a bit more difficult in Shanghai. I try and do it, but it's the pollution's horrible. Yeah, it's really horrible. So I do it when I get frustrated, and I go out and I regret it afterwards. So you know that joy has been taken away from me for the time being. Yeah.
Well, you know, I read, and I don't know if this was accurate or not, but that you do some of your market research for innovation and product ideas by riding into remote villages and asking questions. Is that right?
Actually, I felt it was important to kind of come into a job like that. You know, you got 20,000 people kind of working for you. You really got to understand China. And I'd say like it's taken me 2 years to understand China. Yeah. And I thought I understood it before. You know, I read and hear, but it's not right? Yeah. You know, so you got to live it. You got to really, and it's not about Shanghai and Beijing. Right. I mean, these are big cities, 20 million people in these cities. You know, they're big cities. But actually, the real China is out, you know, in Gansu province, and so I made a point of, you know, really getting out early and going to some of these kind of remote places, and it's extraordinary. You know, you learn. I mean, we're in the healthcare business, so we do a lot of the healthcare equipment, MRIs, CAT scans and stuff. And you go out to these rural hospitals, it's mind-boggling. I mean, I went to one in Kaifeng. Kaifeng actually used to be one of the capitals of China many, many years ago. It had, with the hospital there, it was a bit like a meat market, actually. That's what it looked like.
It's just surgery and just
yeah,
stuff.
Just horrible.
Yeah.
It served 800,000 people. They had 100 beds and one ultrasound, which was 25 years old, right? Wow. You know, and you know, so for us, you see that, and then you understand that that's what's important, not the high-end stuff that we sell. So that, you know, for the market, there's 80,000 hospitals like that in China, have no equipment, and you just don't want to get sick there. You don't want to get sick. Wow. So no, but I think that's seeing that firsthand and meeting the people, going to people's homes. I got to go and see how a rural, you know, Chinese peasant lives, right. And you kind of get an appreciation of that side of it, which is so important and helps me get grounded. Yeah.
Well, when you were initially doing these journeys, these biking trips, and elsewhere into these rural places, was that part of a conscious strategy, or were you just getting exercise?
No. It was part of a conscious strategy to actually reach into rural China and understand, you know, what the other 800 million people do. Yeah. And I think that's helped me a lot. It's been a great conversation piece with the government, because you know when you talk to the people in government, the fact you've done that and you understand that is a big win, actually. So
right.
Yeah.
And you're developing a number of innovation centers, is that right?
Yeah.
Could you talk a bit about that and these co-creation, if I'm saying it right?
So what we do in China, we do three major businesses. We do aviation, so we do the engines on wing. So if you get on a plane in China, there's about a 70% chance that it's one of ours, actually. So great business there. We do energy, so basically anything to do with the energy field. And we do healthcare, so three big areas. Fits in very well. We're centered very much in Shanghai, Beijing. So a couple of years ago, we decided you've got to do two things. One, you've got to get out of those cities, right. And you've got to get, you know, in front of the customers. I mean, David, we talked about this before. You've got to get the customers into, you know, when you innovate, they've got to be there with you. And so the way to do that, you've got to go out to them. So we opened up a number of innovation centers. Probably the biggest one is in Chengdu. And we have about 1,000 engineers, product managers there. And they co-create. So they come up with ideas together with the customers, particularly around rural healthcare. And it's exciting stuff. It's like, you know, well, they've just come out with an ultrasound, which is handheld. So normally you go to a hospital and the ultrasound's sitting in the corner. And this thing's handheld and has a little probe, looks like a mobile phone, right? So that was, you know, innovated out of Wuxi, and then with our friends in Norway and Germany. So, you know, you have to get global brains together. But it you know, almost replaces the stethoscope. And it means that the doctor can go out to the rural people as opposed to them to come in. So
it's battery driven as opposed to
and it's about 1/10 the cost of normal ultrasound. So, you know, that's, you know, we went up to Beijing, we gave a couple of the government, they loved it, you know. They thought it was pretty neat. So stuff like that, you know. So how do you come up with ideas? Like, you're not going to come up with ideas sitting in a room in Beijing or Shanghai or, you know, Fairfield, right? Yeah. So.
Well, the phrase co-creation, I mean, actually, it's a theological phrase. I don't know if you ever think about it that way. That one of my tortured courses when I was getting my PhD down at Princeton, we looked at the concept of creation and what it had to do with the marketplace. So not sort of the creation, however one understands an original concept of creation, but how can our work be a place that we could be co-creators with God? How can we be co-creators with God? And in a strange way, you have this theological mission statement. Have you ever thought of it that way?
Yeah.
You could take it back to the team and let them know.
Yes. Well, I think it's actually I spend a lot of time with the team on making sure we understand our purpose. So I've been
What do you mean by that? Say a bit more. It's interesting.
Well, I think, and I love to work for this company because it's the G ad for the minute, right?
That's right.
It's like I love what we do, right? You know, we do stuff which is meaningful. So I'm trying to get the team to understand that and get them excited. Well, how do you come to work every day? Well, so we're in China. We're there to help China solve a lot of its major problems, and we're there to help improve the quality of life of Chinese people, right? So we focus on those two things, and that's our purpose. That's why we come into work. That's why we innovate. That's why we do what we do, and people get excited about that. And I think that's really, really important. So I think that, as a starting place, from a creation perspective, I think having the right reason you do what you do is important. And particularly a place like China, and it doesn't go unnoticed.
And do you see that crossing cultures? Is that just sort of a Western concept of purpose, meaning, or do you see that's a uniform human desire?
I'd say it's totally uniform. Yeah. Right? So we there's a big week in China. They're basically changing government, right? Literally, and it's not just the top actually. It's the whole.
Is the secret?
I mean, we do this thing called Session C in GE, which is kind of the people part. This is the biggest. They're doing the biggest Session C of all time at the moment, and they change about 50% of the leadership right the way through China.
There's some opportunities there, Wendy, for you.
Yeah, no, yeah, we need you. But I think you talk to these people, they have the same idea, they have the same purpose. Yeah. They want China to be better. They want to clean up the environment. Our environment's a big issue there at the moment, huge. Yeah.
I mean, when I look at the four goals you have, if you just walked into this room, you didn't know that Mark worked for GE, and just thought, well, there's some guy, let's see what he has. His mission statement is to do four things. GE's purpose in China is to help China, 1, solve its toughest problems, 2, improve the quality of life, 3, create global partnerships with national champions, and 4, develop global talent. I mean, if yours were plugged, you'd think it's an NGO or a nonprofit, I mean, it's really, obviously you're there to make a buck.
Yeah.
You've got to do that as the lifeblood. But did you create those yourself, or is that?
That was the team come together.
Yeah.
We spent time really trying to understand it, because I think it's important that they got it. The team got excited about why we're here. And we plug that all the time, and we tell people about it, and we tell the Chinese government about it. They say, hey, this is why G is here. We're going to help you do these things. Yeah.
I mean, I get it. I get excited, like solving tough problems. It's stimulating. I get that. That's terrific. So, do you see that also? Have you ever framed your work as a calling? It's a biblical concept. Everyone understands it a little bit differently. It's not like you get an email from God like, you are now doing X, or maybe you do. I don't get those. but often, however, people describe it differently. There's sort of this inner sense. There's a clear. It feels right. You know you're there for a purpose.
Yeah.
How do you interpret that out of your own faith, or do you park that stuff?
No, I think it's important. I mean, I'm totally convinced I'm there for another reason. I mean, GE hired me. I'm there to do it, but I'm there for another reason. And I kind of view people talk about the career being a set of steps. I don't think it is actually. I think it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You don't see the picture till later on in life when you start putting the pieces together. And I kind of look back at my career now, and everything I've done has been part of that jigsaw puzzle. And here I am, in the most exciting place on the planet, in a very influential job. I get to meet anybody I want there, and with a real purpose. And it's at a point of time which is China's at a huge inflection point now on the whole faith side. So being there and not necessarily proselytizing, but just being who you are, and people notice you're different. Well, why are you different? So.
And you find that with both the very significant expat community as well as the local Chinese? Do you see differences there? Because the whole expat world is its own world too.
Yeah, I think I focus more on the local world. I mean, of all the people we have, I have very few expats actually. So it's a very local team, and they notice. They notice why do you let the cleaner in the elevator before yourself, right? Or why are you so positive? So I'm a Christian. That's why. It's nothing more positive than being a Christian. And so you tell them, right?
Say a bit more about that. What's so positive about being a Christian?
It is, right? Your eternal life is pretty positive. So,
you sort of win Pascal's wager, right?
Yeah. No. But I kind of learned that early in my career as well. I think I had a number of jobs. Probably the most useful job for me was I sold encyclopedias door to door in Australia.
Really? Wait, you actually did that?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I've never heard of. You hear these stories. That's great. Yeah.
And it's I learned way more from that than university, because you learn it's all about your attitude. If I'm hungry, I'm going to sell you a set of books you don't need. Or you do need. You think you need. But that was it. It clicked that it had nothing to do with you. It had everything to do with my attitude. And so being positive, I think you have every decision you make, you have a split-second decision to whether to make it positive or negative.
Right.
And if you train yourself to be positive, I try and teach this to my kids and to my team, it makes life different, and people notice it, and people ask why.
Yeah.
So.
I want to go backwards in order to go forward. So I want to return to the idea of teaching and the state of faith in China. If you don't mind, would you share a bit of your faith journey? Have you always been a person of faith? Is this a recent activity or?
Yeah. Well, my father's a Church of England minister, and his father was.
Oh my.
So I guess I've always struggled with, well, isn't that what you should do? But it's not my calling. And it took me a while to realize that actually, in business, you're there for a reason, right? And you can do exactly the same thing in business. So, and I'd say that I went away from the faith for some time, as living in a vicarage does that to you for a while.
You can kind of go one of two directions when you're father.
Yeah, I went a different way, and I met Angel, actually, my wife. So she her father did a lot of mission work with World Vision, actually, and she'd done the same thing. We kind of both gone the wrong way, ended up both divorcing. We came together and we kind of tiptoed into church together, and that's when it started to come, and it's been amazing where the Lord's led us, actually. So it's and everywhere we go, we've just been able to plug into a church. So we went from there to Hong Kong. We were infants. Then we moved to London, and we got involved with this place called Holy Trinity in Brompton, which is where the Alpha course is done. Yeah. So we got to hang out with Dickie Gumble and all those lots. And then they said, "Oh, you're going to America?" So are you okay? And we came here 1 week after 9/11. And I'll never forget it, actually. We walked into a Stanwich church here. We didn't, we were church hopping,
Sure.
Yeah, who do we go? And Neely came up to us and said, "Oh, where are you from?" So we'd just been to London. So she said, "Do you know Holy Trinity in Brompton?" So, "Oh, yeah, that was our church." She said, "Well, do you know the Alpha course?" So, yeah, we teach. And it just so happened, a week after 9/11, they'd kind of lost a couple of their leaders. And she said, "Well, would you teach?" And we looked at each other, and Thursday night we were there teaching 60 people Alpha, which was... But I tell you, it was a two-way street, right? I mean, there was a need for it there. But boy, talk about getting plugged into the church, right? Yeah. We were like from day one in, and that's happened. We've just been lucky. Japan, the same thing happened. We got plugged into a offspring of a church called Hillsong out of Australia, and that is just extraordinary. It's heavy rock, heavy message to 1,500 kids. In Japanese kids, and it's just awesome. And then China has been another experience where, I 20 years ago when I went to China, I mean, if I'd taken a Bible in, you would have got into trouble, right? I pinch myself now. And Sunday morning I go to church. I go to church in China. I go to church just like you do, right?
Talk a bit about the religious climate there. There's estimates, so let's do a couple facts and figures. Overall population about 1.3 billion plus minus.
Yeah.
And the Christian, estimated Christian number is what?
Well, they reckon it's about 100 million. Which I think most people wouldn't imagine, right? So the official church, so there's basically three ways to think about the church there. The official church, which is kind of sanctioned by the government, is about 14 million. And they're not really affiliated to the Catholic Church. They call themselves Catholic. Then there's a bunch of churches who use their churches. So they're kind of, semi-sanctioned. And then there's like thousands of house churches. So we go to both, actually. So we go to one of the official ones, we go to one of the house churches. It's awesome. You go to the locals. I mean, it's on fire there. It's on fire. This is why I think...
So when you say on fire, remember we're sort of, quiet, reserved. You're from the UK. This is
just like you showed
This is
before.
Greenwich now. Come on. So I'm a little nervous if I'm not like a church kind of guy. I don't want to go to a place that's on fire. No, thank you. I mean, but what is it? Explain a little.
Well, I got taken to one of the local churches recently, and I didn't know what to expect. This was local, and as you walk in, this is not executives. It's local people.
Right.
300 people. It's like the early church. It's charismatic. It's you could feel the Holy Spirit there. It's amazing, and the sense of hunger there is extraordinary. It's a lot to do with Chinese history as well. I mean, the more you understand, the position they're in. And I'm a huge advocate of the US understanding more about China and China understanding more about the US. I think it's so important we do.
So tell me if this resonates with your experience. So I know you recently gave a talk up at Cornell at their business school. You love working with students. You've also done the same in China. I'm in the academic environment. I was invited 2 years ago to go to Beijing and give a talk. It was a conference sponsored by the party with a few universities involved, and it was all about the issue of corruption. And essentially, the theme was a restoration of values. And I was invited to give a specific talk on how Judeo-Christian values might help the business community, ? And what are they? And the curious thing is that I probably would never be invited to give that talk in the States.
No, it is quite unique, right? No, I think that they really they're thinking about their moral compass, which they don't have. So, and this is why I think it's a wonderful opportunity for for Christianity actually. And I think God has a sense of humor. Talk about that. You walk into a shopping center in Christmas time in China, and you don't see Happy Holidays. You see Merry Christmas, not Merry Xmas, and you hear Christmas carols.
And you don't mean like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
Good Queen's Wenceslas, Hark the Herald, and it's hilarious. It's and it makes me laugh everywhere you go, right? So you don't see that in London, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, but I think there is this kind of the void at the moment where they've kind of got this money quickly, they've got success, they've come out of this horrible repression, and they're searching for a moral compass. And lots of it goes back to the trust issue or lack of trust. Right. So I think there's a massive opportunity. We were talking about earlier, actually. I mean, Korea, I think it's kind of interesting model. I think over 90% of people in Korea are Christians, right? And I kind of think, well, could China be there? I mean, imagine if that happened. Imagine for the world, right, if that happened. Yeah. And there's 100 million Christians already there. So, that's quite extraordinary. Yeah. So
let me ask you, sometimes labels can be confusing, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, based on who you are and what your story is. They could be phrases that make you smile or phrases that make you tighten up. What is it for you about being a Christian, about being a follower of Jesus? Like, how do you operationalize it? How does it make you a different leader, a different executive, particularly with ethical quandaries you may face, that that ethical gray zone where you just don't know what to do?
Yeah, I think, and I get this question a lot. I do talk to universities actually. I think just as
in China, you're referring to?
In China, yeah. So when I go to a new city, I turn up at a university, and I basically I'm CEO of GE China. First time I did it, I thought, well, maybe I get 6 people turn up. They had 1,000 kids turn up, right? And no translation. no translation, all in English, okay? Unbelievable questions and thirst, actually, so for question. And they asked me this kind of questions, amazing questions you get from these kids. And, one is like, well, I'm in a job and, they're doing something wrong and they're asking to do something wrong, what do I do? And I tell you, you got to have your moral standards. And you hold that steady and you never compromise, ever compromise. And that's why actually I like the company I'm in, because we have a very, very strong moral code. And I've throughout my career, I've had points, of inflection where that gets in the way sometimes, and you have to make that decision of, what do you do? And I kind of go back.
Can you share a story when you had one of those decisions?
Yeah, probably very early on in my career, I was offered a bribe. I was in a bank actually, and someone wanted to do a deal, and they offered me, and they offered another bank who was doing the deal a bribe, right? And I remember at the time it was quite a bit of money. It was, compared to my salary. Nowadays, my wife would spend it on a handbag, maybe, but so you got to put things in,
Angel's going to get you for that one. I think he needs a second piano for the other room, don't you think?
Yeah. But my moral.
So what'd you do?
My moral compass, and it probably goes back to my upbringing, was no, right? And
was that kind of normative for that region in which you were working for something like this to happen?
It happened, but I knew it happened in the industry, and and the other people who did it got in trouble. They got found out, and they got whacked, right? So, and then again, I experienced it was in Indonesia, a very corrupt place. We were bidding on a big, massive deal, and we lost because the competition bribed, right? And just so upset. You put a year's work into a transaction. You lose out. You're angry. But it comes back. Eventually, the government changed there. They see what happened. They kick the other guys out, and they invite us back in, right? And they invite us back in to teach government people about moral compass, right? Which is So I think you've always got to look. My view is you've got to look at things over the longer term, and I think as long as and I teach these kids, right? You get that set, get your moral compass set on what are your values, and join a company or start a company where people have the same mind, and if they don't have the same mind, try and change them. But if you can't change them, get out, but never ever compromise on that.
I can vouch for that as sort of a outsider to GE. I don't know if I mentioned this when we were chatting earlier. I have my father actually worked for GE when he was a scientist in his early career, but more importantly, my father-in-law worked for GE his whole career, and he was sent around the globe as sort of a trouble fix-it kind of guy, and he helped open up GE in Asia.
Yep.
And GE wanted to do business either the business plan he was given was Indonesia, Taiwan, I think India or Singapore, and he ended up choosing Singapore, which wasn't the path that he was supposed to do. It's because it was the only place that didn't offer bribes.
Yeah.
And GE, even back then, this was in the 50s, was a stickler. He then went to Colombia, which was hugely corrupt, and turned it around solely because he didn't take bribes. But it took GE backing him because it took 3 years of saying no, and Siemens and Philips and everybody else were playing the game.
No, and I think Jeff's great like that, and so was Jack, right? He was like, you'll never get into trouble for, backing off something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the culture. I think that's that's so important to me, right? So, I've had opportunities to work elsewhere. I wouldn't do it because I want to work somewhere where I can match my moral values to what I'm working for.
So how do you, as a practical matter, how do you teach, because you're growing in leaps and bounds, you're bringing people with a totally different culture, and I don't just mean sort of ethnic or country culture, but corporate culture. How do you bring them in to get this GE way, but also your personal manifestation of that? We
spend an enormous amount of time with them, training them, things on compliance training, right? So, you have to, because, GE is held up as a very high regard in China because of who we are. In fact, the government's view is, as they look at their state-run enterprises, they'd love them all to be like GE, global leadership, be a lot of different businesses. But that means you have a higher degree of, scrutiny, right? And you're held to a higher standard, and so we should be. So, teaching people that and letting them really understand that, they, by doing something, they let everybody down. And, we tell them, like, one strike, you're out. So it doesn't matter if you're an officer of the company, vice chairman, you know, lowest of the low, one strike and you're out.
As far as sort of an ethical type of a strike, you mean? Yeah.
And it happens. I mean, 20,000 people, it's like having a small little town, right? Yeah. You have some bad eggs. Yeah.
You know, I do some work with a number of friends here from Deloitte, Jim Quigley and Jerry Lehman, a bunch of our friends there, and I do some, full disclosure, I do some work with them. But in talking about their Asian operations in China, there's this deep sense of how do you enculturate and bring these values in, and there's a yearning for it.
Yeah.
And they're finding the same thing, that if you've got the guts and if your partnership or your firm backs you, it can be done.
Yeah. And I think particularly the younger population.
Yeah.
I think it's more difficult with the older population. I got the Cultural Revolution a lot.
Right.
But with this younger population is awesome.
Yeah.
It's just awesome.
Yeah.
And we do a lot with women. So actually my best leaders are women.
Really?
Right, without a doubt. And and we make a big deal about that.
We have the same thing here in the States, you know. I just
you took a long time to say that.
my wife has me well trained, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Karen's not here, Karen, but I hope she heard that.
You know, I think we have a women's network where we help the women, you know,
Right.
they kind of get together. But no, if you're a woman business person in China, you don't want to really join the state-run enterprises because it's a man's world. I think of 2 years of being in China, I've had a meeting with 2 women, right? And so we bring them in.
As far as state officials,
yeah,
or
state
state-run
officials,
companies,
yeah.
Yep.
And so we bring them in and we train them up, and they're just awesome, you know. So I think, you know, and the values works really well with them. Yeah.
You know, I don't know about you, my career has not been linear. I've had some, done some stupid things. I wish I could have a mulligans and do some things over. More than I wish to. And it's kind of dangerous when you're an ethics professor and you have to sort of acknowledge that. But if you look back in your life, I'm sure you've not, if you're human too, can you may need to disguise the story, but can you think of a dilemma or a situation where you look back and go, I didn't do that, I'm not proud of that decision?
Yeah. I think, I mean, you know, everybody has those, and I think that's part of your jigsaw puzzle. Yeah. Right. I think you have to do that to some extent to learn, right? So, and I look back and I think, you know, for me, I don't like to lose,
right?
And I don't like, you know, to not get my own way, right? And it might resonate with a few people here tonight. And so when you don't, you get angry. And maybe you say things or you do things which, you know, are wrong, right? And you know, and over the fullness of time, you realize that actually, and that's why you're putting your faith in God is so important, because that wasn't meant for you, and that's why you didn't get it, and because He had a better thing waiting for you down the road, right? And so once you understand that, I think, you know, that helped me. But I look back and, you know, some of those things haven't been pretty. I think another thing, after the financial crisis, I was in the real estate business actually. Yeah. So I've had a few different careers in GE, and, you know, I had to lay off 300 people. And, you know, you do it, you have to do it. You have to do it, and it's the best thing for the company. But, you know, I look back at that and think, you know, I could probably done that in a better way.
What would you have done differently?
More humane.
And what would that look like?
You know, just the people's dignity, right? So, you know, you're mucking around with people's lives. You know, so I've got to make my numbers. I've got to take cost out. You know, we have this rigorous process of ranking people, right? You know, so, you know, if you're in the wrong ranking, you're out, and so you know you're there. Right. And I think you've got to. You know, you got to really work on people leaving with dignity. And
you know, it reminds me of a dear friend of Karen and mine. He was a mentor to Karen. He's retired now, and aged was the Saul Schreiber was a special master to the Pan Am Lockerbie insurance settlement, and a practicing Jew, a terrific guy. And he brought in, and he was able to solve with all the families, all the victims' families, on behalf of the airlines, with the exception of one family. And he's just this brilliant, human, highly ethical person. I said, "So, well, what happened to that one family?" He said, "It was the end of the day. It was exhausted. I'd gone through about 100 different families over the course of days, and I was so exhausted I couldn't look the person in the eye, and they didn't believe me." Yeah. He couldn't show his humanity anymore. He was out of gas. And to this day, he's so sad, because that's the one that went to litigation and so forth. It's humanity, isn't it?
That's right. No. I mean, I think humility is one of the most important leadership traits, right? And how do you do it in a foreign context? I think it's even more so. So and I've got some really good lead. Through my career, you learn off the bad ones as much as you learn off the good ones, actually. Yeah. So I've had some really bad leaders. I had some really good leaders, and I learn off both of them.
So Catholics call it the via negativa. How do you learn? so what's something you learned from a leader? Obviously, don't mention names, but someone that go, well, if I'm ever king or sitting in the corner office, I'm not going to do that.
Well, I think I'm a nutcase on scheduling and timing.
Okay.
And I learned that because I had a boss who wasn't. And
you were going to say the other way around.
And you just you see the multiplier effect, of how inefficient and how disrespectful it is for people. So I've learned to, if you be on time, and to the, almost Germanic, and so sorry, nothing wrong with the Germans.
We're good with that. We have a little bond there.
Yeah. But I think, as a leader, being respectful for people's time, and I learned that from sitting around a conference room waiting 2 hours for the guy who hadn't started the meeting because he didn't do that. And it's just lack of respect. It's humility again. So,
right. And how about via positiva? What's something they go, wow, I want to be like her, I want to be like him?
Well, I think, I've had some marvelous mentors through my career. And I think even now, you've got to continue to have mentors. And Jeff Immelt is just a wonderful, he comes to China. He's been going there since '84. So he gets in the car with me. He says, "Mark, I'm here for two things. One, I'm the #1 salesman, and I'm here to teach you." And I do. I learn. You see how he handles a meeting with government. You see the respect they have for him. He goes there. When he did the jobs committee here, he was not particularly popular. He is so popular in China. And he's like a statesman there, right? And I learn from him as he goes through, and it's just his positiveness about, he sees the bigger picture, he sees the good in things, and he stays the course. So and China's a tough place. You trying to do business there with some of these state-run enterprises. It's it's an interesting experience.
I was at a dinner a couple years ago. It was actually a few years ago, shortly after he was appointed as the new president of GE, and it was with Ralph Larson. Some of you may remember the former CEO of Johnson & Johnson. And we somehow got talking about elections, and he said, who would make the best president of this country? Who's that? We figured it'd be one of the candidates. He said Jeff Immelt. But he didn't run. We'd be missing a big thing if we didn't talk about corruption. It's endemic. It's everywhere. It's so easy to close your eye. There's administrative fees. There's lawyers' fees. There's 1,000 ways it can be buried, even with a company as scrupulous as yours. How do you think about that with your vendors, your contractors?
Yeah, we hold the line, and again, we've no compromise, and we lose business because of that. But we get business because of it, and that's the more important thing. So I think firstly, from a company's perspective, it's zero compromise, and we try and teach our people that. Now sometimes you catch people in doing stupid things, that's natural, but I'd say it's the exception. China itself is corruption is just a horrible, it's a disease actually.
It's an interesting metaphor, huh?
Yeah, and it's everywhere. It's in everything. It's in everywhere. And probably one of the, they've got some big issues to tackle, right? But corruption's probably the biggest hit. And, I think I've got to, China's basically led by the top 7, these new guys who've come in. I've met 5 of these guys. And they're pretty good. They're good people. And, their top of mind is how do you get rid of corruption? And, and to Xi Jinping's credit, he's come out of the gate, trying to stamp it. Now, how you really do it, it's going to take a generation to spit out. But and that's why it's so important we hold the line, and we teach our partners. So we have 27 joint ventures with state-run enterprises, and it's a learning experience every day, for us and for them. And and it's companies like us and IBM and Boeing and who they learn off, and so slowly it's going to get better, but there's something they got to fix. It's just it's horrible. It's as bad as the pollution issue. And pollution, we
bumped into that, but we got off on a different track. Talk a bit about the environment and pollution.
If China as a place to work is awesome. As a place to live, it's tough. I was in Beijing last week, and the World Health Standard, for clean air pollution, MB particles, molecules of particles is 25. right? So it's a healthy level. Beijing last week was 1,000. Okay, so it just can't be good for you. and so they're in Congress at the moment. They even think that half of the proclamations kind of come out about the environment, and it's horrible. It's not just Beijing. Every city I go to, it's the same. It's just it's everywhere. It's in everything, and it's not good. No, that's.
I've got to ask you one question. There's when I teach business ethics, you really don't need a textbook. You just use the Wall Street Journal, or for that matter, use the Bible. It's full of fallen heroes, right? What do you do? Could you, if you don't mind sharing, what personal disciplines do you try to practice, maybe involving your faith, maybe not, to help keep you what I call ethically fresh? That it's so easy, back to our silly frog again, it is easy to get numbed to, well, everyone else does it. This is how we do it. Or you're tired, or what'd you say, you fly 270 days a year, you're on the road? So where you live actually is at 35,000 feet.
That, no, so one of our airplanes is my home. So
so let's face it, that's exhausting. How do you stay ethically fresh?
Look, I think family is key, and I'm lucky enough to have a wife who she's not here tonight because she's running an alpha course in Mandarin for locals in Shanghai, right? So and she plugs into in any environment we're in, and she's got a knack to do that, as she did here, right? So so that's important, and we go to church and we're very involved, and I think it's not just a matter of going to church to hear what the preacher says. It's a matter of getting involved. I think reading the Bible every day is key, and finding that precious time in the morning to take a passage out and just reflect on it. I think that's really important.
This may be a dumb question, but what do you get from reading the Bible? I mean, what's it do for you?
It just it grounds you. It grounds you, right? It just it speaks to you every day. I think it's just a small passage. I've been doing Romans this last few weeks, and what is the wages of sin is death, right? And you kind of you think about that, and you see stuff happening around you in China, and it just resonates. And it just resonated with me this week. That was just so stuff like that. So I think that's important. And then I found within the company, and it's not something you talk about your faith in a company like G. It's just we keep fairly politically correct. But I have a network of Christian leaders, and we help each other. And I found a group of Christian leaders in China, and we share, we help each other, and because we're all in the same boat. This thing is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you're trying to navigate through it. You're not local. You've got you're trying to deal with all the nuances of the culture, and sometimes you lose it. You lose it.
If you look in your career personally, or if you just think of your friends, your peers, when the old days you go skating on the lake as opposed to on an ice rink somewhere in a building, you'd see signs for thin ice. Where are the thin ice spots in your life and your peers' life that you need to be aware of?
I think the biggest issue is not to get too proud, right? I think that's, or who you are. Right? Okay, I'm GE. I'm here. I'm coming here to save you, to solve your problems, right? Well, no, actually, I'm not here. I'm here to work with you to help you, with your problems. I think kind of checking your pride in every day is probably the most important thing. And then I think from in a personal perspective, it's just making sure you stay close to your moral standards. I think it's, there's a lot of temptation out there, right? And you're in an environment where you probably see more than you should, and so it's making sure you stay away from that. So.
Sometimes what we try to think about in G, just like you can have physical fitness, you could work on your forehand or your backhand or your stroke, whatever it is, that you can have spiritual fitness, you can have ethical fitness, but it takes practice and discipline, doesn't it? And
I'm convinced that you are all in your roles, whatever you do, for a reason. It's probably beyond what you do in your job. And I totally believe that for me in China, and I'm lucky enough to be in this place where, it's something really going to happen there over the next few years. Well,
as we draw to a close, would you have any Closing thing that you'd like to share about your world that we should know, or maybe that the other way around, you wish your world knew about us, just to step back, or any last thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, I would just encourage, I think there's a lot of press about China and a lot of discussion. I mean, every time I come here, I get hit with a wall on what happened in China. I think, look, in the world economy, it's all about the G2. It's not the G8, it's not the G20, it's the G2. It's China and the United States. And if you guys can get on with the Chinese, I'm neither, by the way, so I'm neutral here. The world is going to be a better place. And if you don't, it's not. And it's all about understanding each other. And they're different. They have a different culture. They think differently. They're not like you, okay? Actually, they want to be you, right? They want to be, maybe not everything you have. Maybe not, the elections you have, that kind of last year. But they want to have everything you have. It's easy street here, right. Compared to what they've got to do. And they've done this they're on this, I come back, they're on this 50-year journey to be you. And they're 20 years in, and you should be rooting for them. This new government coming in, they're good guys. They get it. If you had them in this room today, they would fit quite comfortably. They talk, they're educated, they're westernized, they're worldly, they talk about all this stuff, right? And they need your help, right? And they need your prayer. So what would you do? I think two things I'd ask you to do. Pray for China. Pray for China. And my experience, I get a lot of exposure to young people. And this is a different generation. They have a thirst to learn from you. And I always kind of go in, you say, how do you go into a room with 1,000 kids? Like, say, I'm not nowhere near as smart as you guys, but I'm older, right? And because I'm older, I've had a few I've had some different experiences. This is why I can share that with you. You should do the same. Each and every one of you should be doing the same. You do it at a school. Go to a local school. Go to a Sunday school. Go and see a bunch of kids and talk to them. And I mean, the experience you've had is so rich. And how you pass that down to the next generation, because they're going to grow up in a flat world, right? They're competing not just with the kid from Colorado. It's from Delhi. It's from Chengdu, and this lot, they're coming at them really fast. So they're going to need every help they can get. Yeah.
And if one last question about how can we, if I may be so bold, pray for you of your, particularly the work part of your life?
Yeah, I think at a personal level, I personally know I'm there for a different reason, right? And and still searching for how you can, really do as much as you can for the kingdom. I think that's and then the other thing is just, it's a tough place to operate. It's tough on your health, it's tough on your marriage, it's tough on your life, and, and just, I know a lot of you who I know, we are in your prayers, and you're in our prayers, and I think that's just, keeping that going. The connection here is so strong, to us. As I said, this is my spiritual home here, so,
Well, we're delighted to have had you back in your spiritual. How about a huge round of applause for Mark?
Thank you. Thank you.
Some people talk about the Northeast being this sort of spiritual wasteland, and yet it's your spiritual home. It's sort of interesting to think of that. As a closing word, I, like a lot of you, I travel, and this morning I left my wife, who's Karen, we're down in Key Biscayne, and we got up early, watched the sunrise, and then flew from Miami to Newark, and then very intelligently drove from Newark south an hour to Princeton, to then get some things to come up here. And sometimes when I'm on the road, like you, I go, why am I doing this? I could still be watching the sunset with my wife, and instead of being on a plane and a train and everything else in a car. But it's moments like this when I see fellow searchers, fellow journeyers, am inspired by people like Mark who, we don't always get it right, but you're in the game and you're giving it your best, and I thank you for that. So thanks again, Mark. So we have a custom. Sometimes we end when the cannonball goes off at the Indian Harbor Yacht Club. So I'm not going to shoot a cannon here, but if you don't mind, I'll send you out with a blessing, and of course stay and enjoy the drink and friendship if you wish. But my blessing to you all, with our eyes wide open, is that we can also ourselves be co-creators in that which we do in our work, that we could find meaning and purpose in what we do in our work above and beyond the work itself. May you travel in peace as you go home tonight. Thank you all.